Hi everyone. Doing my video post for our week 5 discussion board. This week we were talking about the PARS model, which stands for processing, activity, relationship, and self. Um, After reading the article, it was pretty interesting to see that there was actually a model for this type of group activity. But moving forward to the questions, our first question asks, what was something that you found particularly interesting about the PARS model? Something that I found to be particularly interesting was in fact that there was even a model, so to speak, for conducting groups. When reading about this model and seeing it in action per the video, I immediately began to think, well, this is, typically how a group runs. You begin to process your particular activity that is being formed, and during the processing, you are reflecting on the activity, understanding the requirements for the activity, and also figuring out how to apply that to yourself and, in fact, in life. I think that it is interesting, also good to have such a model for beginning group leaders to follow for structured and unstructured group experiences. Question number 2 asks, how will you plan on using the model in your own work? As mentioned before in another discussion board assignment, the particular group setting that I am working in is with higher education. Groups that I typically will lead or counseling groups, and sometimes psychoeducational groups. I like the idea of having an icebreaker activity to begin the lesson. This kind of gives the group members an opportunity to get to know one another. And once the group members feel comfortable with one another, it makes it easier to have group discussions because the sense of uneasiness, that feeling is kind of gone. An example that I will use or share is of a psychoeducational group that I would probably lead through a group presentation, and that will probably be on information that we have at the Career Center, such as resumes or interviewing skills. Typically, students are going to be in a classroom setting or a lecture type setting, and a presentation, PowerPoint or Prezi or something of the sort would be presented to the students. And it would, of course, be focused on effective resume writing or effective job interviewing skills. Students would also probably be provided with resources they could use in the future. I think the PARS model would definitely be applied to such a group setting or a group, and the idea of bringing closure to the presentation. There would definitely be a review of what was learned and the reason those skills would actually be important, not only while they're in school, but more importantly, once they get out of school and they're into the real world looking for jobs and things of the sort. Again, that part of the model, which is reflecting, would allow the students to, again, reflect on the presentation and figure out how to apply these skills to their life. Throughout the presentation, of course, students would be allowed to ask questions and also share their reactions to what they've actually observed. Question number 3 is, given your unique population or interests, how might you need to modify or add to the model? And thinking about the PARS model, I think that the type of population that I will be working with, I think that while the information is conveyed through the presentation, I will need to try to provide students with an opportunity to reflect on their personal skills and their abilities as it relates to the topic at hand. Given that time, once the information is presented, give students some time to kind of think about their resumes or the job interview that they may have coming up. I think it's also and will be important to allow the student to have a good understanding of why it's important to have a resume or to have good interviewing skills. So I don't think there would be any modifications needed, just more of integrating mostly all of the steps throughout the group's time. And that's my response for week 5's discussion board.